Them say me no fit jump, them say you no fit jump, them say we no fit jump. Them say me no fit jump, them say you no fit jump, them say we no go fit jump. I'm a girl when you want to my boy na cha cha catch my walk wa banya. Kaya jenje sana mama.
Na de wa you know. Kaya jenje sana mama. Padi kete ku you know.
Kaya jenje sana mama.
Kumre kwedu.
Kaya jenje sana mama.
Kumre kwedu.
Kaya jenje sana mama.
Sumilin de ura pa.
Kaya jenje sana mama. Kaya jenje sana mama.
Kinya budu you know.
Kaya jenje sana mama.
What you ni mene.
Kaya jenje sana mama. Kaya jenje sana mama.
Tuna me ba me yo.
Kaja Israel, Kaba Egypt, Kaja Ethiopia, Kaja Sudan, Waja Shong. Kaja Ikushima, you know, Wanime Kona, me Waja Shong. So Timbuktu, Ghana, Mali, Sumanguru, you know, Waja Shong. Waja Gay, Waja Shong. Taki no sumanguru no wakwejeke waja shong. Osetutu you know, Wamasa you know, Yasantwa you know waja shong. Kaja Israel, Kaba Egypt, Kaja Ethiopia, Kaja Sudan waja shong. Akwaka chuma wanye ya fokelacha, akachuma wanye anunyamfeng. Akwaka chuma wanye ya fokelacha. Akachuma wanye, amenyamfeng. Ameka minyamatu, ameka onyangotu, ameka wanyangwatumo. Ameka minyamatu, ameka onyangotu, ameka wanyangwatumo. Ameka wanyangwatumo, buina chacha, kachuma waka wabanya. Kaya jenje sanya mwabawa, kaya jenje sanya mwabawa. Them say me no fit jump, them say you no fit jump, them say we no fit jump. Them say we no fit jump, them say you no fit jump, them say we no go fit jump. I'm a girl when you want to my boy na cha cha, I catch my walk where walk where walk where. Get it, sign your mama.
Na be wa you know, ya sign your mama. Padi kete ku you know.
Get it, sign my mama.
Umre kwedu.
Get it, sign your mama.
Umre kwedu.
Get it, sign your mama.
Sumilin de ura pa.
Get it, sign my mama. Get it, sign your mama.
Kinya budu you know.
Get it, sign your mama.
What you ni mena ju. Sama ba me yo. What you ni mena ju na me ba me yo.
Thank you very much for coming. We have to cross over to StarrFM now. My colleague Francis Aban is hosting the flag bearer of the NDC, John Dramani Mahama.
Effects of COVID, like Europe is suffering. And so that's the only thing going for us. Aside from that, it's not that we've done anything extraordinary to try and protect our people. Okay. We haven't.
So with 34 days to go to the elections, what can we do, at least on the points of political activity, to reduce the risk of the spread of the infection?
Well, that's why we're trying to, at the constituency level, just keep it to the house to house and then little mini rallies. If it weren't for the COVID, I mean, we'll have much bigger rallies than we're having. But these are mini rallies in order to minimize the number of people. And so we're not going to have the kind of mass rallies where we fill a whole stadium with people. And that's why we're going to many more communities within every constituency. Because if the leader of the party were coming to, say, Medina Old Road, Medina constituency is a big constituency, so you'll have people coming from all the different parts of the constituency to come and see the leader of the party and listen to him. But we're going to 3 communities in Medina constituency in order to reduce the numbers of people who will congregate in any one place. And so those are the kinds of strategies we're using to keep down the numbers.
Okay, that's fine. Now let's look at the state of our economy. The year 2020 has seen our growth numbers dwindle significantly. Already, the projections were that we would do under 1% this year because of COVID. The latest projections have taken us a little over 1%. But generally, how would you describe, in all honesty, the state of Ghana's economy?
Our economy is in the ICU, like I said sometime. Intensive care, seriously. And it's a fine, big mess. We're going to end the year at 16% deficit, which is far higher than the recommended below 5%. We're going to end the year with debt to GDP of almost 80%.
76.7.
No, it's about 77% now, and all the numbers haven't come in yet. And so by the end of the year, by the time the books are closed in January, we'll end up at almost 80%. And that is, I mean, historically the highest we would ever, have been landed with. We currently, wages and interest payments account for 143% of revenues. It means
way above
all the revenues we can collect. And so I said in the last statement I made that Nanado has created a debt vortex which is consuming everything. And so even if we had gotten this 500 million from my mineral royalty, it would have just consumed it, because it's a vortex that just keeps needing money to feed it. The finance minister has gone to Parliament with the provisional estimates for early next year.
First quarter.
And he's estimating that we need to go on to the international market to raise another $5 billion, to be able to finance the budget for early next year. Where are we going to stop? Where is it going to stop? You get my point. And so it's a very serious situation in which we find ourselves. And this is not new. It's not like COVID caused it. COVID didn't cause it.
At all?
No.
It played no part?
No, COVID has made it worse, but he was on a mass borrowing spree already. He had borrowed $9 billion already. And domestic revenue was not performing well. At the end of last year, I've said this is the third time, and they failed to respond. At the end of last year, they were not able to meet the target for domestic revenue. So when they borrowed money from commercial banks against the Public Financial Management Act, and Dr. Adair, whoever he is, chairman is quiet, whoever the CEO of Ghana Revenue.
You mean the GRE chair?
GRE, they didn't meet the target for last year, so they went to 2 commercial banks and borrowed money to fill the gap against the accounts of 2 large taxpayers. It's a fact. And so it means that the economy was not doing well already. This finance minister has been cooking the books. I've said it several times. He takes big ticket items like the energy sector debt, the financial, the debts occurring from the financial sector clean out, and he makes them footnotes in the budget statement, but does not add it to the accounting for the budget so that he can balance the budget and get a lower deficit number and better figures. And so that's the figure he gives to Parliament. And then he has a separate set of figures. Eventually, when COVID came and he had to, provide the figures of the state of the economy at the beginning of COVID, he presented a different set of figures that showed the deficit was much higher, the debt was much higher, and the budget was not balancing. And so it's something he's been doing. He's been clever with, cooking the books and showing different figures. This is the first time in the history of Ghana that a finance minister has different sets of documents. We've been used to having one fiscal set that the IMF has, that we have. But now IMF gives different figures. He also has his different figures. It's created quite a confusion. But we could always see through it. And we alerted this nation long ago.
But in terms of the PFMA, the annual debt report, the budget statements will come with this appendix that we all reference. Some say the devil in the detail is all in there.
It's not there.
At all?
If you present the budget and you owe 22 billion for financial sector clean out and you don't add it in the budget, does that take that debt away? That debt is still there. Yeah, and then if you owe for energy sector liabilities and you take them out of the budget just so that you can have good figures to show to Francis and all the media and everybody, does that take the energy sector debt away? It doesn't. It is only when we came to COVID that he was compelled to add those debts, and he showed that we had a much higher deficit. But every year he was telling us he had 4% deficit, 4-point-something% deficit, you know. And so he's used it to fool the IMF, used it to fool the credit rating agencies. They kept upgrading him, even though the economy was performing poorly. It was just to give the perception that they are better economic managers than we were. You know, we also climbed out from a very serious situation. We implemented the single spine. We also had the same commodity meltdown. Oil actually came down to $38 per barrel. But the economy was more resilient and had better buffers. At the end of 2016, even in an election year and all that we went through, we ended up with a 6.3% deficit. We're going to end up with a 16% deficit this year. It means the economy is in crisis, and it will need crisis management
to handle it.
Whoever comes into office.
So you mentioned that wages and salaries and also interest payments are taking quite a huge chunk.
About 143% of revenues.
143.
So we're spending more than we're bringing in.
Sure. So based on that presentation or the picture that you have shown us, what will be your solution in addressing this? Because there are some who've argued that the reality of our situation is that 2021 would have to take very critical and crucial decisions. And so does that mean we look to an austere 2021 vis-a-vis the promises that we're making to do in 2021?
You know, I faced a similar situation in 2012 when the full brunt of the single spine hit. And then we also had to pay arrears. You know, we had agreed with the unions that we'll pay the arrears in installments. And so finally the arrears had to kick in, and then the new wage levels and the single spine kicked in. It shot us up with regards to compensation to about 73-74% of total revenues. And so after you took out wages and compensation, you are just 23 or 24%
to do anything else
for goods and services, capital expenditure, everything else. By the time I left office, we had managed to bring that down to about 56% of revenues. And that's what gave us the breathing space, fiscal space, to be able to do some of the things that we did, including the infrastructure development and all that. But we did that by getting a buy-in from everybody. You remember something called the Senchi Forum?
Yes.
Yeah, we held the Senchi Forum. We invited all the stakeholders in. PV, being of blessed memory, was one of the major coordinators. Worked with the NDPC and the Ministry of Finance, and we came up with what we call a fiscal consolidation plan, which we presented to the Senchi Forum. We had, I mean, just name all the big names, the economists, you know, the unions, the Union of Ghana students, everybody was there. And we gave them the true state of the economy. We showed them our plans for fiscal consolidation, and you can't imagine the kind of ideas we got. That eventually came to what we call the fiscal consolidation plan, which we presented to the IMF, you know, and we got a program from the IMF. The two things the IMF did was it helped us to shore up our foreign reserves by the loan that we're given. It was almost 900 and something million. But then, more importantly, it gave us policy credibility so that then we could work with our international partners. We could go onto the market and all that. And so that's why we went onto that program, so that we could reset the economy. By the time we were leaving office, we had quite balanced out the economy. We had worked and brought on stream 2 new oil wells, which we handed over to the incoming government. We didn't earn any money from the new wells. Everything we did in this economy, we did with just the Jubilee well. But when we're handing over, the 10th field had come into operation, the Sankofa field had come into operation.
So 3 fields, yes.
We also introduced the Energy Sector Levy Act to deal with the debts, energy debts. We knew that the Kufuor bond had to be retired in September 2017, and so we left enough money in the sinking fund
to pay it off.
We set up the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, and we put $270 million in there to serve as seed money for infrastructure borrowing to invest in social and economic infrastructure. We left that money there. We left money in the stabilization fund for a situation like this, COVID. And so, but for the money we left in there, when COVID struck, I mean, the initial 1.2 billion that government had took to be able to start looking for PPEs and compensating nurses and doctors and so on and so forth came from the stabilization fund that we left. So we're building the kind of buffers that makes an economy more resilient. And I'm sure that if this government had just continued from where we left off, it would mean that Ghana would have been in a much better place than we were.
But they also argue that much as you gave them these assets in your handing over, you also left them liabilities, debts to pay, including they mentioned some unexplained 7 billion that was not captured in your handing over notes.
They added it to the deficit. They added it to the deficit. That's what came to 6.3. The final deficit number for 2016 is 6.3%. That was the final deficit number. So you cannot say that it was not added to it. It was added to it.
Okay. So based on that, to the question I was asking, 2021, the projection is that once we are in this distress this year, next year will be difficult.
Next year we'll do another Century Forum. I said that. I said when I become president, we'll take stock of what the actual state of the economy is, because when you get into the driving seat, then all the debts that has been swept under the carpet, you're able to take it out and see what the true state of the economy is. But from what the IMF has said and from some of the statistics and documents we have, is extrapolating 16%. So it's going to be a tough situation. Once we have done the confirmation of what the figures are, we will come up with a strategy. We'll hold a Century Forum 2 and bring all stakeholders together. We'll tell Ghanaians the state of the economy, and together we'll come up with a solution to it. We've done it before, and we can do it again.
So you get the public buy-in for whatever decision that has to be taken?
You need to carry the public along in any policies that you take. And so you need to get a public buy-in. So bring all the recognizable groups, let them know what the true state of the economy is, and then say that this is what we intend to do to fix it. And when you get a buy-in, then they're ready to cooperate with you.
Okay, so in view of this, how would you be able to end double track in 2021? How would you be able to pay off the persons who had their monies in men's gold, in the financial houses? How would you be able to pay all of these things when there's distress and we'll have to recover?
We're going to fast track the completion of the schools. We'll prioritize that. The good thing is that a good number of them are near completion. I commissioned 43 before I left office, completed, and we put children in some of them. In others, they had roofed, put the doors and everything. And many about, if you take a total, another 40 were at an advanced stage of completion. And so if we're able to finish those additional 40 schools quickly and populate them with children, remember that each of these schools can take a number of about 1,000 to 1,500 children. And so if we're able to finish an additional 40, and you can put about 1,500 students in any of those schools, then you can see the numbers that you're bringing. I'll give you an example. For some of the schools we finished, it eased pressure on the schools, senior high schools in neighboring communities. And I always give the example of two examples. One is my own constituency, Bamboy. We put a community day school there. They had up to JHS, and so when you finish JHS in Bamboy, then you have to go to Bole Secondary, or you go to Kintampo or Techiman Secondary or Winchi Secondary. But as soon as we put a community day school in Bamboy, the children who finish JHS in Bamboy are able to just go into the senior high school there. And so it eases the pressure on some of the other schools that they would otherwise have been posted to. It was the same with the school we opened in Kwabinya, and then the other one at Frafraha. I mean, all the people living in Domi Kwabinya area whose children had been posted to Boko or Kukrantumi or somewhere immediately went to that school and gained admission for their children. And so their children did not end up adding to the congestion in those schools. So if we're able to fast track and finish those schools, we'll be able to ease the congestion on the existing schools. There are also many projects that the GET Fund was doing, dormitory blocks, classrooms, and other things that have just been abandoned. And if we're able to push those projects, it will ease the congestion in the existing secondary schools. And so we're going to put that as fast track. It depends on how you prioritize things. Ending the double track will be a priority in the first year. And so whatever resources we can find, we'll apply to expanding access.
To put it first.
We can end the double.
But do you have an idea of the costing for it and how much you spent to that endeavor?
Well, we have to re-evaluate those projects, because when we're in office, we built an e-block for 7 million Ghana cedis and all its ancillary facilities for 7 million Ghana cedis. We'll have to have the surveyors and the civil engineers do a costing. And the point is, for those I said we're at different stages of completion, unless you send a civil engineer to go and appraise it and see what is left to finish it. Some will cost less, some will cost more, depending on what stage they got to before the projects were abandoned.
Okay. What about the people you're promising to pay back their monies within the first year? Do you have an idea of how much that will cost, and do we have the funds to do that? Well,
the finance minister put a cost of 22 billion, and he says he's paid 98% of them, and that's what he says. And so if 2% have not gotten their money yet, when we come, we'll pay them.
The 2%?
Yes, when we come, we'll pay them. Unless he's lying to us that he's paid 98%, you know. But when we come, we'll find the money to pay them.
And the Men's Gold customers?
Men's Gold is a different kettle of fish, because we don't know what the extent of the indebtedness is. I've not seen any document that shows that this is how much it is. So
one there, unless our leaders will do that. We can't provide.
So Timbuktu, Ghana Mali, Sumanguru, you know what you're shown. Manchester, you know Sumanguru, you know walk where you get, what you're shown. Osetutu, you know, Bamasa, you know. Yasantwa, you know what you're shown. Get your Israel, get Egypt, get Ethiopia, get Sudan, what you're shown. Abaka, Bajimo, one year, for Kalaja, I get you one year, and in young fang. Abaka, Bajimo, 1 year, for Kalaja, I get you 1 year, and in young fang. I'm a Gamian Matu, I'm a Gaonian Motu, I'm a Gaonian Watumo. I'm a Gamian Matu, I'm a Gaonian Motu. I'm a girl when young what to win at a time, catch my walk, walk out, Banya. Can you change inside your mama? Can you change inside your mama? Can you change inside my mama? Can you change inside your mama? You mama, if I change inside your mama, can you change inside my mama? What you do, what you mean? Can you change inside your mama? Can you change inside your mama? When I do not remember me, can you change inside my mama? Can you change inside your mama? Can you change inside your mama? Abaka, Bajimo, 1 year, for Kalaja, I get you 1 year, and in young fang. Abaka, Bajimo, 1 year, for Kalaja, I get you 1 year, and in young fang. Them say me no fit jump, them say you no fit jump, them say we no fit jump. Them say we no fit jump, them say you no fit jump, them say we no go fit jump. I'm a girl when young what to my boy, not a child, catch you my walk, Banya. Can you change inside your mama?
Nagbewa you know, ya siri you mama, padi kete ku you know.
Can you change inside my mama?
Umere kwedu,
can you change inside your mama?
Umere kwedu,
can you change inside your mama?
Sumili njewura dipa,
can you change inside my mama? Can you change inside your mama?
Inyabudu you know.
Can you change inside your mama?
What you need?
Pass. I mean, the charge, investigation shows, quite well that if we give them the opportunity, they can do a good job. So IOCO must now kick in and then look at that other aspect of it and then see what happened and then take whatever action needs to be taken.
Bank of Ghana. What about Bank of Ghana and the matter of unexplained wealth that moves into bank accounts?
It means that banking supervision must be more strenuous. We have the Financial Intelligence Center, and it is the duty of the Financial Intelligence Center to look at unexplained movements of cash. And I think that there must have been a failing there, because definitely deposits would have come in, money should have been transferred into different accounts and so on and so forth. And so if it exceeds a certain limit, you should be able to look in and see if something funny is not happening. So there must have been a failure there to pick it up. But, well, Traj was able to pick it up finally. And so the rest should be for the EOCO to look at. But it means that then Bank of Ghana and the Financial Intelligence Center must set up and do a more thorough job.
Okay. The other matter that's come up this week is the Ejapa deal. You are on record to have said that that deal is a bad deal. You cancel it. It doesn't serve our best interest. Have you been impressed with, first, the corruption risk assessment that's been done by Martin Amidou and the decisions taken subsequent to it?
Well, it's nothing new. It's not surprising, because the minority said it and said that the deal was a bad deal and that it was vitiated with corruption, and so it should be cancelled. I think 13 CSOs came out and also said it was a bad deal and should be cancelled. And so it's not surprising that when the Office of Special Prosecutor went into it, they found the same thing that all of us, had said. And so it doesn't come as a surprise. Issues about no guarantees for value for money, bid rigging and all that, those were accusations that came up as soon as the agreement was laid in Parliament. It was also fast-tracked. It was put there. They were not given sufficient time to scrutinize it. It was passed quickly. Certainly whoever was sending it wanted it approved as quickly as possible so that these things will be covered up. But the Special Prosecutor kicked in and has raised the issues. For me, the issue is not about returning it to Parliament
for review.
I think it should be withdrawn completely, and there's no hurry to bring it back. I mean, a whole new look should be taken about what we want to do with our gold royalties, and then consensus built around it before any such agreement is brought to Parliament. But the point is, if such serious accusations are being made against an important person like the finance minister, one would have thought that he would act evenly in terms of the charge report and the PPA chief executive and the OSP's report and the Ejapa deal and the finance minister. And so he would have either asked the finance minister to step aside or, suspend him or sack him, after receiving the report. But he's been quiet on that front. If you want to act evenly, then you must, also give some sanction to the finance minister. But that's where nepotism kicks in, because we all know the finance minister is his cousin. And so while he's able to act in the case of the PPA chief executive, his hands are tied in the case of the finance minister. Otherwise, I mean, with the kinds of, report the OSP has brought, it indicts the finance minister in a major way.
Okay. Still with the fight against corruption. So Mr. Amidou published this document.
Yeah.
Almost 67 pages.
Yeah.
Have you been impressed with his work in helping the nation fight corruption?
I've not read through it. I've seen excerpts of the document, but if the excerpts I've seen are to be exactly what's in the document, then I would say that he's been very objective. He's acted in an objective manner. And I also admire the speed with which he's gone through it and come up with a report. And so that would be a good thing. I think that it saves the country quite some money, because if this flotation had been done, one of the main concerns was that the value of those royalties the value had been undervalued, let me put it that way, because they had valued it at 1-point-something billion, but experts who looked at it said it should have been worth more, like 3 billion. And so what would have happened is an IPO would have taken place. People who have gone and bought the shares for cheap and then seen an appreciation in their shares almost immediately once it begins to market, because then the true value would have been realized. And if the true value is double, then it means that they could see a 100% appreciation in whatever shares they have. So there's been a saving to the state. I think it should be withdrawn completely. if we want to do securitization with our royalties, let's consult stakeholders, let's come to a consensus, let's decide how we want to do it.
And then go forward. If you're to win the 2020 elections, would you back Mr. Abedi to do more of such work in dealing with corruption?
Well, the OSP, I mean, is an institution that everybody supported. When the bill was passed in Parliament, it was unanimous on both sides that we needed the OSP to do this kind of work. And so it's been established. Our party is not objecting to the Office of the Special Prosecutor. The only problem is the office has been hobbled in terms of finances. He himself said it, that he doesn't have sufficient budget to be able to get investigators and things. So sometimes he has to rely on other institutions to give him investigators.
So you fund him
and that slows down.
More funds to do his work?
I think not only the OSP, but also TRAJ, Yoko, and all of them. Because, I mean, like I was saying, from some of the things we're seeing, if they are funded properly and they're encouraged to do their work, they'll be able to do a good job in the fight against corruption. You see, we have the institutions, we have the laws. What we need is the political will
to be able to
let them work independently and give them enough funding to be able to do their work.
Even though this report was on Ejapa, he spared a paragraph in this work to talk about the Airbus scandal, and he says that the only reason he's not come after you is because you are flag bearer of the largest opposition party, and that he says you are a government official one. How do you respond to this?
I'm surprised. I mean, it's obvious why that paragraph was put in there. I mean, this damning report was coming out, and I'm disappointed in Matiamidu to have put that paragraph there just to equalize and bring up Airbus as if it was a major issue. I've had my say on the Airbus issue. No financial benefit accrued to me, not a single dollar, and the point even is there is no basis. We're talking about a deferred prosecution agreement in which nobody's names were mentioned. And yet there's been inference that it must be this person, it must be that person. And so legally he doesn't even have any basis to proceed. On what basis, on what document is he proceeding?
Well, he says he's done investigation, and that he has...
What investigation? Where
he has somebody of evidence.
Who has he spoken to? What investigation has he conducted? He should come out and tell us.
Okay. All right. Let's now, from corruption, let's move to job creation. You said that youth unemployment is a national security threat, and that you intend to address it with a number of programs that's captured in your manifesto. 1 million jobs for Ijumapa. Will these be private sector-led jobs? Will they be public sector jobs? Help us appreciate what this 1 million jobs is for Ijumapa and the big push.
It will be a combination of public and private. Let me start with public. We've done a human resource gap analysis, and we realize what the optimum numbers in terms of public sector employment should be. For instance, the security services, the police service. And so there are gaps in there in terms of human resource recruitment. And so we will seek to fill those gaps. And so that's the first one. And so public sector will do some of that employment, but then the bulk of it would be private sector. And it will come out of the major policy pushes that we put. One is the 10 billion big push, which is a major infrastructural investment program, where we intend to put in about $2 billion into the economy each year. Now, the main thrust of this investment is going to go to Ghanaian companies, Ghanaian registered companies that pay taxes in Ghana, so that if we raise that money, it's not going to go out, find its way out of our economy. It's going to stay in our economy and multiply, so that these companies can expand, can retool, and be able to employ more people. For instance, when I was president, we gave, at the time, 50 million Ghana cedis. It was about almost $30-something million to about 6 or 7 pharmaceutical companies. We gave it to them to retool and expand. And you'll be surprised at the number of jobs they created. Aside from that, it also enabled them to begin export into the international market. And that's how come Ghanaian pharmaceuticals, are the most popular in Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and others. And so just one sector like that and an investment like that led to expansion of production and led to recruitment of more people. We will do the same with other industries that exist, but aside from that, the main thrust will be to take a full advantage of Ghana's potential in terms of agro-processing. We haven't done enough in that value chain. We always go for the production angle of it. We give fertilizers to farmers, we give them tractors to farm and all that. But we haven't tied down taking the products of them, processing them and making them ready for both the domestic market and for export.
And to add value.
And to add value to it. I went, for instance, to Western Region, and I went to BOP, B-O-P-P, Benso Oil Palm Plantation. It sits on about 6,000 hectares of land, and it's got an oil palm processing plant on it. And it processes palm oil and supplies it to the vegetable oil factories in Tema, and then also for soap making and all that. Benso Oil Palm Plantation employs 1,700 people. You know, many of them drawn from within the community. We can have multiples of Benso oil palm because, you know, we're importing 467,000 metric tons of palm oil from Malaysia every year. When we have, if not the same, better conditions for producing, you know, that palm oil. So if we even establish another 2 or 3 or 4 Bensos, we'll be able to close the gap in our import of palm oil and employ almost 10,000 people in its production. I'm just giving that as one example.
Yes.
You can say that for cashew, you can say it for cocoa. We're exporting most of our cocoa beans, so we can process into butter and powder and so on and so forth here. We can do that for pepper, we can do it for ginger, we can do it for cassava. I give the example of one of our MPs in Brongahafu who has set up a cassava processing plant, and he produces cassava flour as an input to beer for the breweries. And he was telling me that he produces 20 tons a day, and the breweries need 45 tons a day. And so he's under supplying because there's a bigger, you know, demand for it. And aside from that, all those who make biscuits in Tema, they put some cassava flour, they mix it with the wheat flour. And so there's a demand for that cassava flour, and he cannot supply. You know, so there is a mismatch in terms of value addition and processing. And I think that that's a gap into which we can put a lot of young people, both in terms of direct employment in whatever factories are created under what we call the crop processing zones. We're going to map out the whole country and look at what the major crops are, and then put in the processing capacity to be able to add value to those crops. We'll create thousands of jobs there. There will also be the indirect benefit of the farmers who will supply, you know, the crops to the factory, because then they'll have a ready market, and so it makes it easier for them to supply. Take, for instance, rice production. I mean, we're spending more than $700 million a year importing rice into this country, and yet we have the potential to cut that down drastically. And it's just that our farmers grow the rice, they have to sell it as paddy, and so they get a smaller return on profit. But as soon as you take it to a rice mill and you mill it into nice rice that is table ready and put it in a bag, suddenly the value of that same rice goes up, you know, and so the person who mills it makes most of the money. And so why don't we get small mills for these farmers so that they can take their rice there, mill their rice, and then make it ready for the market and sell it so that they get a higher value, they can expand their farms, make more money, I mean, create a better life for their families and so on and so. So these are all the things that we have, but also in the digital space.
Before I go to digital, on this point you raised about the agric and the factories and how helping to add value.
Yeah.
How would this plan be different from the 1D1F and the planting for food and jobs that we're seeing now?
You see, the 1D1F, they've just, crop processing zones do not match with political districts. When you say 1D1F, then you're taking a political delineation and saying that we'll build a factory in every political district. Ours is different. We're not taking political districts. We're using processing zones that go beyond districts. And so if you take the cashew producing zone, for instance, it stretches from Bono East right across to the Bono region. And so they're about, let's say, 16 districts within that crop processing zone. So you're not looking at them in terms of political districts. You're looking at that zone and saying, how many processing plants can we put here to be able to buy all this cashew of the farmers, process it for export and for domestic consumption? And so that's where the difference comes. And then aside from that, the 1D1F is going to somebody's factory. I mean, there are cases where the factory exists already. There's some tricycle assembly factory that used to exist from Professor Mills's time. I was called to commission it at one time. I didn't have the time to do it. Then suddenly you see a signboard is put in front of it. It says one district, one factory. And the people who live there say, but we've lived with this factory for God knows how many years. How can this
to
be
revive it, to
a 1D1F? There's an example of a factory that, was giving money to build a security perimeter. As soon as you're giving some money for something, not in terms of expansion of production or anything, I mean, a signboard appears in front of your factory as 1D1F. I mean, it's been a political con, seriously, because many of the factories don't even exist. The factories that they say they have put, you go there, sheep and goats are grazing.
Which ones are these? Where are they?
Oh, there's several. I mean, if you go on social media, you find the signboard is there, and you see somebody walking on it and saying this is where it is said that this factory is supposed to be, and it is. I'm sure you've seen some of those videos yourself, Francis.
Okay, so that's for the industrializing our country and our economy.
Yeah.
You talk about jobs in the digital economy. What jobs are we talking about here?
In the digital and the service industry space, we can create phenomenal jobs using youth startups. And so we've come out with incentives for young people who want to go into software, writing, into hardware and whatever, to give them an exemption from income tax so that they're able to establish their businesses. We also want to give them credit for those initial years when they have to invest, so that they're able to invest and establish their industries and employ other people. In the service industry, in tourism, I mean, there are many things that we can do if we look at improving our tourist opportunities, creating more jobs in that space, in creative industry and all that. And so we are looking at a more coordinated plan, and some of the money from the big push in terms of social and economic infrastructure will be invested in this area so that we're able to expand the number of people who are able to find work in there. We think we can do 1 million or more. But the most important one is the pivot into skills upscaling, especially for technical and vocational education training. Because of our colonial education system, we have all our children leaving primary school, going to JHS. The JHS was supposed to have a skills training component of it, which we've never been able to really pin down. And so there were supposed to be technical workshops, where while they study the theoretical subjects, they get some skills. Master craftsmen were supposed to come and train them. But somehow we just abandoned all that. And so the children go through JHS, they go into secondary school, they come out with certificates, they have no skills to enter the world of work. And now the white-collar jobs that everybody is seeking are few and far between. And so you can walk with your certificate from office to office and not find a job. But then you see a company has set up and they say, look, we need crane operators, we need bulldozer operators, we need excavator operators, we need master plumbers, we need carpenters, we need tilers, we need this, And so it's those who have those skills who eventually end up with those kinds of jobs. And so if we can do a pivot and make technical and vocational education not something that people should be ashamed of, but as a means to go into the job market, then we'll be making some progress. I've met some people. I have a friend that somebody was working in his house, and somehow I'd gone to visit him. This was in London. And there's a guy who had finished a polytechnic, or let's say technical university. And when he finished, he decided to go into building. And so he went and did a specialized course on building and all that. And my friend was renovating his house. He was taking out his bathroom and doing a new bathroom. So there's a guy with a degree. And so he is there in his overalls and everything, and he's had 1 or 2 people with him, and he's charged for the job, £1,000, £2,000 or something.
Good money.
Yeah. And he will come and he will do the house, put in the bath and everything, and he takes his money, good money, and he goes. But I mean, if somebody of similar qualification leaves university, he will expect that government should find a place for him to sit behind some desk and do some work or look for a white-collar job, But the economy is changing, and now the jobs that are becoming available are the jobs that require some skill, professional skill to do.
So more blue-collar jobs and empowering people in that space.
Exactly.
That brings me to education and making these skills available for the youth to be able to access these jobs. In the People's Manifesto, you speak about the free TVET that you're concentrating on.
Yeah.
What's the plan for that one? And the document suggests that area for education requires a lot of investment in the equipment that is needed to be able to aid that level of education. How will we go about it? And also, can we find the funds to fund this kind of education?
The big push.
Okay.
We will fund
for the free TVET and the
that's
logistics.
That's for setting up the technical vocational training center.
Yes.
What happens is we don't have enough in the first place, and so there are districts where there's no facility for training young people in terms of technical vocational education and training. So in the districts that do not have those facilities, we will put those facilities in, and what we'll do is we'll bring the young people in batches, and then we'll train them, let them go out for some practicals, bring another batch in, and then we'll bring them back in, and then continue the training until we certificate them and they come out. And so we'll do it in batches. We'll also use the opportunities available where it is in the technical universities. When the students of the technical universities vacate and are at home, we can bring these young people in and then have them trained using the facilities in the technical university. And so we'll look for wherever there's capacity. NVTI has various training institutions, so we'll upscale those training institutions, and then for the children in those locations, we'll send them there for training.
To maximize the use
of the resources we have to give technical vocational education skills. They'll either use it to go into the world of work, or they can set up on their own. Once they have those skills, they can decide that, look, I'm going to set up my own business. I'm going to do furniture, for the market. I'm going to become a professional tiler and take jobs styling people's places. Right now, 103.5. If you want to tile your house, they will ask you to go and take Togolese because they say they are the best tilers. Why can't? I don't think that Togolese are more, they have more potential or capacity for learning tiling than Ghanaian youth have.
It's about them mastering their craft.
Exactly, mastering the craft is the most important thing. And so if we can get our young people, give them the skills, they master their craft, there's a lot of opportunity within this country in terms of finding work in the economy.
Okay, 2 minutes to now, you're listening to Morning Star. My guest this morning, the flag bearer of the NDC, former President John Dramani Mahama. Still on education, and let me just remind you that we're live on GH1 television, here on StarrFM, on Ultimate FM in Kumasi, Empire FM in Sekenita Krade, on Kasapar FM, and also on Ago TV. On education, you've mentioned that you will seek to review and make better the free senior high school policy. Just a couple of days ago, Charles had raised some concerns about the funding for development in our senior high schools. They're asking for a certain review of the free senior high school policy as it relates to the PTA levies that are being charged. Your thoughts on this? The government says there's no need to review it. They will not look to these concerns. What's your thoughts on this? The concerns of Charles and how you are seeking to review free SHS?
You see, the free SHS, I've said, and I'll say again, is a very good policy, but with very poor implementation. And those behind it are pig-headed. They're not willing to listen to anybody else. They think that they are all-knowing, and so they don't allow anybody to make any suggestions to improve it. All the teachers and the education staff have been cowed into silence. You should do some investigation, speak to headmasters quietly, and they'll tell you that they can't talk because if you talk, you either be transferred or you'll be dismissed. And so, I mean, in this case, they came out and said, look, let's review. There are some things that are not going too well. And you notice that a few days later, they said, oh, they meant no harm. Of course, I mean, they got that phone call and said, what are you saying? What are you talking about? And it makes them feel threatened, that they will be dismissed or something. So they came back and said, oh, no, they didn't mean any harm. Because that's the atmosphere. There's an atmosphere of fear and intimidation in the education sector. Because whoever at the head of that sector have, created a sense of fear amongst all the education workers, and so they're not able to do anything. Poor implementation in terms of even the feeding. What they've done is they give a small budget for some little condiments that go with the catering.
The perishables?
Yes. But then the bulk of it you must take from buffer stock. I mean, there was one time I was speaking to one of the headmasters, and they had not got any supply from buffer stock. And if he didn't do something, the children would not be able to eat. So he had to go and look for money, borrow money, and go and buy food to come and feed the children. And so the point is, why not let the headmasters be responsible for it? If the thing is in buffer stock, let them go and buy it. If it's not available, they can buy it on the open market. But what they do is the buffer stock is giving the money to buy the food and give to the teachers. And that is done because there's some political patronage in it. Those who supply the food to buffer stock are party people, party executives. I know a farmer who went to buffer stock and said, look, I have 1,000 mini bags of maize. I want to come and sell it to you. They said, we wouldn't do it like that. You have to go and see this person. And so he'll buy the maize at a certain price, and then he'll come and sell it to buffer stock at a certain price. That cannot be efficient, But that is what the situation is.
So will the NDC look to stop the use of the buffer stock company to buy the food items?
I think buffer stock should be able to sell to the schools, but give the money to the schools. Let the bearers and the headmasters procure the food from any source, from buffer stock, from the farmers directly, or from any food contractors, directly. Let them be able to procure it from any source. And so we'll give back control to the headmasters and the school authorities to be able to procure their food. Buffer stock can, if it has, stock and can sell it to them at a competitive price, can do that. But not give the money to buffer stock. Buffer stock buys the food and supplies it to them.
Okay. Now, in some of the places you've been to on your campaign rounds, chiefs and people have been talking to you about projects that you started that have been abandoned by this administration.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this, and what will your next government do about these abandoned projects?
There are thousands of them.
Thousands?
Yeah. I mean, in every community you go to, there's either a police station that, whose construction came to a halt because the government changed. You go to the schools, there's a dormitory block that was being built that has come to a halt because government changed. And you'll find that there's a dormitory block in the school which was being built. As soon as government came, work on the dormitory block stalled.
3.5.
Now, if money was available, why not continue the dormitory block? Before you see another contractor comes and is building an administration block instead of finishing the dormitory block. So they are all over. I mean, the community day schools, projects in various schools, Get Fund project in various schools, police stations, clinics, hospitals, and all that. And so I've said that we must do an immediate inventory of all these uncompleted projects. And then we must revalue what cost would go into completing them. And then instead of starting new projects, put in money to complete as many of these projects as possible and make them available for use. That would be a more optimal use of our finances than abandoning the old projects and coming to start new projects in the same, institutions. And so that's one of the things we'll do. We'll first take an inventory in all the districts of all government projects, what their state is, how much it will cost to finish them, and all that. In some cases, you can seed the project to the district assembly and ask the district assembly to apply its money to complete the project and have use of it for whatever. That's if you have no more use of it for anything. I mean, there are projects that have been standing for several years because the funding, either dried up. And so if we can complete it, the community can immediately have use of it. And I think that it will be of benefit to the country.
Okay, let's spare a couple of minutes and look at the creative industry as well. Let's talk of the creative industry bill that is supposed to be passed. How do you view this sector, and what kinds of interventions do you plan for the space?
There's a lot that we can do in the creative industry. I mean, if you look at our young people, they have a special bent towards using their creative energies, rather than the professions that we have typically been used to. And so, I mean, a lot of them want to go into the music space. Many of them want to go into drama, movies, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, we don't have the facility to be able to make them realize that full potential. So putting that facility in will be important. One of the things we suggest is creating a multimedia university out of NAFTI. NAFTI is a university already, but putting in the kind of capacity to be able to bring young people in, either for short courses, for long courses, for certificate courses, degrees, and so on and so forth, in order that they are able to gain the professional and artistic skill to be able to go into the arts industry. If you look at a country like Nigeria, Nigeria is making millions, from music and from their movies. These two areas, they're making quite a lot of money from it. We need to also take advantage of it. I mean, you go to East Africa or to South Africa, and they're showing a Ghanaian movie, and they call it Nigerian movie because they don't know the difference. And so we can also piggyback on Nigeria's creative juices, and also build the kind of industry that will make us as much money from it as possible. It will not only bring foreign exchange into our country, but it also creates thousands of jobs for young people. That is, if we do it right, and we're prepared to spend the money to do it right, creates the opportunities not only in Accra, but in also the other regions, where young people can have studios, they can have, studios to go and cut their music. And sometimes you'll be surprised at the kind of talent that is coming out of there. But they just don't even have the little money to go to a studio and go and do that music. And so if you have multiple studios in regions, that allow them to do it at subsidized rates. For instance, they can go and do their music there, but take also the movie industry. You spend so much money and you do a movie, and then when it comes to exhibiting it, there are no theaters, and the theaters are private. And so I hear that when they go to the theaters to go and exhibit, it's a 50-50 or sometimes 60-40, and so you have done the investment. Just that somebody has a theater and you have to go and exhibit your film there, the person takes half of the proceeds, or if not more than half of the proceeds. And so eventually you're not able to break even, and that's what makes it difficult for us to bring out more movies. And so if government can invest and create more exhibition places so that people who finish their movies are able to go there and exhibit them, government takes 20% or something to maintain the place and keep the place running, I think that it will be a very good investment.
What about sports development? I mean, in the next couple of weeks, the Ghana Premier League is back online. It's been off, COVID and everything in between. There's a new administration at the helm of affairs for the GFA. What are some of the things that you're looking forward to do in improving our sports development, football, and the other major disciplines?
I think that the promoters of sports need government support. For instance, those who own the football teams have been financing these teams from their own pockets, and the returns are not good. Because we have access now to all the European leagues, people have a greater interest in watching, the EPL, the La Liga, and others. And so people are not coming to the stadium as much as they can. And so the quality of our football, for instance, is going down. We tried to boost boxing when I was in office. We got SNIT to build the
arena,
the Emporium.
Yes.
And when it's finished, it's supposed to bring young people, not only from Bukom but other places, to train them and give them an interest in boxing. And maybe we'll have some world champions emerging from there. We can replicate that in the various regions and also create recreational facilities where young people can come and train in basketball, in volleyball, and all that. We built the Cape Coast Stadium. It's got a basketball court, it's got a volleyball court, it's got a gym, it's got many other things in there. And so if we're able to decentralize this and democratize it to the districts and regions, it will create the facility for us to be able to pick talents from these places. We also talked about the sports college idea, where we will reserve some of the schools as sports colleges so that talented sports people, we will put the facilities for training in there. And then if they are in secondary school, we'll bring them into those schools. And so while they are learning, they are training. And so as they train, we also want to turn the Winneba Sports College into a sports university, and so they can have a continuation of their academic work while they do sports at the same time. And so these are all some of the ideas that we have. Create the opportunities and facilities, not only in Accra and Kumasi and the big cities, but in all the other regional capitals where you can find talents, bring them, train them, let them continue to go to school while they do sports.
Okay. Speaking of football and the local football, what club do you support?
I used to support Tamale United.
Oh, don't be heartbroken. You used to?
Yes.
Oh, because they're gone now.
We're gone. I don't know which division we're in now.
So what new club are you picking up for the new season to support?
No, since I became president, I got too busy with work that I never really got into supporting any club. Okay. But in the past, I supported Real Tamale United until we crashed out of the first division. Yeah. I don't know if we're in second division or whatever division we're in now.
Okay. Yeah. But you've got to pick one for the new season so people can also get interested based on your interest.
Well, let me see how they play, and then I'll decide which.
So you have to justify your.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course,
to be able to pick one. That's
course.
Fine. On the creative sector, the musicians play a part every year in elections, in selling messages and campaigns, even with endorsements as well. Just yesterday, Samini Sarkodie have endorsed the president. 4 years ago, I do recall some musicians and those in the creative space also endorsed you. Is there value for you in this election, heading into this election, to get endorsements from politicians, from musicians?
Well, musicians would make music for you and all that, but it doesn't really amount to an endorsement. That's we don't understand some of these things. In Ghana, when a musician makes music for you or for a political party, then he comes against quite a lot of antipathy from the supporters of the other party, and that shouldn't be the case. But unfortunately, that is what happens. And so in this particular campaign, I have tried to discourage as much as possible getting celebrities involved in our campaign, because it leads to a distraction of their careers, And so, if you notice, I haven't gone around with, celebrities and musicians and so on and so forth, because our politics does not understand those things. And so, I don't have any antipathy or anger with anybody who endorses Nanado. That's their decision.
So you don't have feelings for Sarkodie and Samini for endorsing Nanado?
Oh, I like them. They are young, talented musicians, and my attitude towards them doesn't change. I mean, Samini has been somebody that I like. I mean, his music, Linda and all that. I mean, we all love those music. And so if he's endorsed Nanado, he must have his reasons for doing that. It doesn't change my attitude towards him. But I've said that I won't, get musicians and celebrities deeply involved in my campaign, because I don't want to affect their careers. People will misinterpret it and think that because they support you, I won't buy their music. Because they support you, I won't watch their movies, and so.
Okay. You've asked the president to justify the 140 billion that he's borrowed. He's yet to give the full details for it. Why is that important? Why is that breakdown important?
When we left office in 2016, Ghana's total public debt from independence was 122 billion. Today, Ghana's total public debt is 263 billion. The rate of borrowing in these 4 years has been supersonic.
Supersonic?
Yes. Yes. It's been supersonic. The growth of the debt has been supersonic. And the point we make is, if you borrow at that rate, you must be investing it in something tangible. You understand? Unfortunately, there's not much that one can see that a phenomenal increase in our public debt has been able to give us. Unless you know something I don't know. But there's nothing, really nothing to show for it. Mostly they'll say free SHS, but free SHS has not been financed by debt. It's been financed from the ABFA, the annual budget funding amount, which is taken from our oil revenues. And so it cannot be part of the debt. And so what accounts for that huge increase in our debts? I mean, it's for them to tell us. I haven't seen a single hospital. I haven't seen a single secondary school completed with children studying in it. I haven't seen any major road or highway that has been fixed. You know, there's only been an increase of 1.something% to access to electricity. And so it means that not much has been done in the electricity space. I haven't seen, you know, any new small town water system that has been put in place. And so the point is, 140-something billion Ghana cedis later, what is there to show for it?
Speaking of that, you've called the president out for a debate a number of times. He hasn't responded. Since you are in his neighborhood, I mean, his house is just a stone's throw away from here. Would you want to take a stroll, tell him, Mr. President, I'm still waiting for the debate?
I probably would be gunned down by national security.
Oh, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure he will be able to, you know, have you sit down, have a conversation, then talk about the debate?
Well, I don't think. I mean, if I just started walking towards there, they would think, "What's wrong with this man? Is he crazy?"
But do you want the debate to happen?
I think the nation will benefit from it. It will make issues clearer to our people so that they can make up their minds, you know, who to vote for. Because, I mean, we all are touting our programs and all that. We both have a track record now. My 4 years in office, his 4 years in office. We both have our manifestos. It would have been great for us, the leaders of the party, to sit, you know, and make a pitch to the people of Ghana. But I'm tired of talking about it. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. They are not interested. And so let's do the best we can. We'll sell our message to the people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Two key things on the international scene. Ivory Coast has just had an election.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of violence. People have been killed. The results suggest that Mr. Ouattara got over 90% of the votes. What do you make of the post-election blues in Ivory Coast, and how should it be addressed, not just by the country, but the sub-regional body ECOWAS as well?
It's possible he got 90-something% of the vote because the main opposition boycotted the election. And so, I mean, definitely you have a much higher percentage if it's only his party people voting. Yeah, so that is it. But the issue and the contention is the third term bid. Our African protocols on elections and democracy discourage us from, you know, attempting to stay in office beyond the number of terms specified in our constitutions. Unfortunately, many countries are beginning to, you know, overturn that and amend the constitutions to allow them to run more than 2 terms. With regards to, it's happened in Guinea, you know, it happened in Burundi before, it almost happened in Niger, and then there was a coup d'etat and all that. But it looks like increasingly that is what Rwanda, it happened in Rwanda. With regards to Cote d'Ivoire, President Ouattara was willing to step down. He appointed his successor. Unfortunately, his successor died, you know, before the election. I would have believed that he's got quite a lot of young, bright people. As president, we had close relations with Cote d'Ivoire. And so I met some of his ministers, Bakayoko. I mean, there's so many of them, very bright people, I mean, who I think would and have been very loyal to him, who could have stepped into his shoes. I don't know the reason why he didn't, you know, promote any of them to take over from him. But as it is, It's created a bit of a ruffle. I hope things will settle down, and we just hope that democracy will continue to prevail.
Okay, heading into this election, can you give us your word and commitment towards a peaceful, violence-free election?
I give you my commitment to a peaceful, violence-free election. I'm not going to do anything that would create violence in the country. And I hope that the same will be on the other side. Any danger signals about violence are seen more with the NPP than with us. We don't have trained vigilantes. They have trained vigilantes. We don't have vigilantes that we've infused into the security services. When we're in office, and even before we went into office, the National Security Council has been a coordinating body, not an operational body. Today, this government has turned it into operational. The national security operatives who carry AK-47s and weapons, and they go and effect arrest and so on and so forth. That is not the duty of the National Security Council. If somebody must be arrested, they ask the police or the BNI or one of the agencies to do the arrest. But now you have all kinds of people in different uniforms. You now can't even tell who is a police officer, who is SWAT, who is national security. Some of the national security officers are dressed even more frighteningly than, some commando unit or something like that. And that is what is creating agitation in the system. I said that a lot of these people, many of those, and I'm talking about the vigilantes, they're trying to extrapolate it to say, I say the army and police are thugs and armed robbers. No, I'm saying that the Delta forces and invisible forces lived with our people in the communities, and we know some of them were dishonorable characters. Today, you see those same people with national security IDs, carrying weapons and all that. And I'm saying we knew that they used to be armed robbers when they were in our communities and they were carrying out robberies and things. So now that they're in the security services, they work normally as security personnel during the weekdays, and then what do they do as their part-time job, at the weekends? We don't know. And there have been robberies where ID cards have been found linked with, the national security and the Jubilee House. And so we can safely say that some of those vigilante characters are involved in, dishonorable activity.
Okay. As we wrap up our conversation this morning, former President John Dramani Mahama, do you find time to relax at all?
At this time, it's very difficult. Few and far between is rare. As you know, we're doing the Greater Accra tour. We broke it off yesterday because I had a lot of appointments to take care of. We've done that, and we're continuing again today. And so, really, time to relax. I mean, it will happen after the elections.
So for now, no time to relax at all. But if you do, what do you do normally? I'm sure people can take tips from you on how to de-stress.
Well, I used to love riding my motorcycle, but I haven't ridden for some time.
How long? When was the last time you did it?
About 6 months ago.
6 months?
Yes.
Okay.
But I haven't ridden for some time, so I do some physical exercises.
Push-ups?
No, walking.
Okay.
Walking, treadmill, and then lately I do some yoga.
Yoga?
Yes.
How long?
30 minutes is fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It has some good stretches in yoga. Yeah, and so for the health of your back, your spine, because you sit in a car for long, and I mean it can have an effect on your spine.
Yeah.
And so there are stretches in yoga for the back and the spine, which I'm using, and then for other parts of the body,
Okay. You're multilingual. You speak a lot of local languages. Was that an adaptation habit you picked up in your days of study in Soyuz or Soviet Union, or you are bringing across different cities here in Ghana?
Incidentally, I didn't live in too many cities. I've lived in Accra and Tamale most of my life. If you ask me to break down how long I've stayed in any two towns, it's Accra and Tamale.
Yeah.
Accra, when I was growing up, I attended primary school here, Achimota Primary, and somehow I picked up Ga, and so I could speak some Ga by the time I was 12 years old. And then I moved to secondary school in Tamale. And in Tamale, I picked up the Bani, and then I learned Hausa, and then I learned my own language, Gonja.
Okay.
Yeah, because when I was growing up, my mother wasn't in the house, and my stepmother, who lived in the house, did not speak Gonja. So Gonja was not the language we spoke at home. But when I went to Tamale, I got the opportunity to learn my own language, Gonja, learn Hausa, and learn Dagbani. And then I came back to Accra, and then I picked up the guy again. You know, I had left when I was quite young, so when I came back, I could listen. People were speaking around me, so I was picking it up again.
Yeah.
After Tree, I don't know where I picked it up.
You don't know?
I haven't lived in any Akan speaking city, but somehow it just, you know, I just picked it up because hearing people speak it all over the place, and then eventually I married Lodina, who's Akan. We speak Tree. We speak Hausa. She grew up in Tamale, so she speaks Hausa.
Okay.
We speak Dagbani. She understands Dagbani. And so sometimes when we are talking and we don't want the children to understand what we're saying, we'll either slip into Hausa or Dagbani.
And they don't come and ask you, what are you talking about?
Them, why are you speaking that? I remember when our kids were small, Shafiq, you know, and they came and they were talking to us and things.
Yeah.
And we didn't want them to hear what we were talking about. So we slipped into Hausa, and they don't understand it. And then Shafiq at the time, I mean, we kept talking, and says, why are you speaking that language? You don't want us to understand what you're saying. Are we spies? I mean, that was the most funny.
Yeah.
He says, are they spies? Why don't we want them to understand?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, interesting.
But,
are you a good cook?
No, lousy.
At all?
I can fry eggs. I can cook rice. I can boil yam.
That's it. Soup?
I don't know.
Stew?
No.
None.
It's not where my talent lies. I can do Gary soakings.
We can all do that.
You know what? Once you went to secondary school.
Yeah, you have to. You have to. Fantastic. I want to say thank you for joining us. Before you wrap up, 34 days to go to the elections.
Yeah.
4 years ago, you were unsuccessful. You lost your re-election bid. Almost 4 years after, I'm certain you know why. You're seeking re-election to complete your unexpired second term. For the many who are watching and listening to us today on StarrFM, on Alternate FM, Empire FM, Kasapar FM, GH1 TV, Ago TV, and all our affiliates across the country, tell us, why should Ghanaians choose John Mahama and no one else on December 7th?
Because he's a person you can trust. What you see is what you get. I have a track record of delivering. And I believe that after the experience of having been president before, I will make a better president in my second term, based on the fact that some issues come better to you when you have stepped back and then you rejig and you go back. One of the regrets I have is that in my time in office, I didn't speak directly to the people, you know, to let them understand what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so the vacuum was filled by a lot of propaganda from the opposition, you know, making all kinds of accusations that really didn't exist. And so if I have another opportunity, I'll speak more directly to the people. Often when you become president, you have a communications minister, information minister, all kinds of people speaking on your behalf, you know, but I think that it is better that the president, eyeball to eyeball with the people, explains the policies that he's engaged in. And I mean, when I was in office, I knew what we were doing in every sector. I could explain what we're doing in every sector. And I think that the responsibility is given to the person, the mandate is given to the person who's president. And I think he should take that seriously and be able to engage with the people from time to time, more regularly than I did. I did it once a year in some kind of meet the press and all that kind of thing. But I think the next time I have the opportunity, I'll go around the country, I'll meet the people, I'll talk to them, I'll explain to them what policies we're implementing, why anything is happening and what is going on. I think that that is one of my major regrets, and I'll make up for it when I become president again.
Any other regrets you have?
Well, that's the main one. I can't think of any. But like I'm confident that we can win, but I'm also realistic that the decision rests with the people of Ghana. And so if they give me a one-touch, I would love it. But whatever they give us, as long as victory comes, that will be acceptable to me.
And if it's a loss, you graciously accept it?
Depends on what happens. You know, we've kept complaining about what's been happening with the EC. And it looks like we are just some crybabies. It's only NDC that has a problem. But these are major infractions of the processes and the legal environment leading up to an election. I said yesterday that I think that it's because it's a new commission. They have no experience with running an election, and so some inefficiencies are showing. But if you're a new commission and you have no experience, you must be ready to learn, you know. And so when we draw attention to those infractions, it's not because we hate the commission, but it's because we want to have a fair level of confidence that it's a level playing field and all of us will be treated correctly. And so that's why we do what we do. Let's see what happens on election day. On election day, I mean, the standard for an election to qualify as a proper election are known internationally. And so if on election day some things happen and people are hounded all over the place and ballot boxes are snatched and missing and all that, you cannot call that an election anybody will accept. You know, so I don't want to prejudge. I say if it's a transparent, free and fair election, I'll accept the results.
Fantastic.
Yep.
I thank you for your time. This is one song I know you love. In fact, when I heard you sing it in a post, I'm like, wow.
I've heard people say that
he's one of my favorites.
Your favorites?
Yeah, I love him.
Okay. I hear you are a very romantic man, true?
I don't know. Ask Lodina. If you ask her, she'll say I'm not.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
I'm not an extrovert. I've been a bit of an introvert, you know, and there are some little things that I'm a Sagittarian.
Okay.
And Sagittarians are a bit careless. They tend to forget people's birthdays and things.
Yeah.
And so when you have a person like that, then, you know, the women don't consider you very romantic, you know.
I hear you're also a teaser. You know how to get under people's skin.
Of course.
Okay,
you know,
thank you very much.
It relieves the stress of life. I mean, when you play little pranks on people, and they do it to me too.
Okay. And you take it?
Oh, no, I take it.
Fantastic. I want to say thank you to you for joining us.
No, thank you, Francis.
Grateful. Former President John Dramani Mahama, I'm thankful that you could join us today for this very insightful conversation.
Lovely interview. Thank you, Francis.
Grateful.
Mama.